With new income ETFs coming out left and right, under your bed, down your chimney, it's time we have one central depository, a holy grail, if you will, of the top income ETFs. Consider this like the power rankings of income ETFs. And this could be a reoccurring theme that we do here on this channel. Every month, these income ETFs should ideally be paying out some big, juicy dividends, and there's going to be some months where they do very well, and there's going to be some months where they do very bad. So actively getting the best income ETFs ranked. Now, of course, we need some good criteria to rank these income ETFs. So in no particular order, I have some criteria here that I used to rank these income ETFs, the top 5 best income ETFs. So in no order here, guys, they first need to maintain that NAV. I love to see a big fat NAV in front of my face. So that NAV, it better not be eroded. NAV erosion is definitely a real thing that has huge consequences on your total returns. It's gonna have huge consequences on your cash flow. It's going to have huge consequences on your chances of being able to retire early if we can't even rely on the NAV to be maintained. Now, of course, we also like to see some price appreciation. Now, with income ETFs, of course, price appreciation is not the main goal. There's going to be a lot of upside given up because of the covered calls that they're doing. So you're going to give away some of that. But just seeing a little bit of price appreciation is great. It's going to help with that NAV. It's going to hopefully create some bigger, juicier dividends in the future and help with that cash flow. All right, and then of course, probably the biggest reason why you invest in these income ETFs is the dividends. Dividends. All right, so dividends, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Of course, everyone wants the highest yield, but with the lowest amount of risk. So it's always trying to find that right trade-off, that right balance to get rich with these income ETFs. And then history of paying out dividends, or how long the fund has been out, that also needs to be considered, right? That shows that management is taking care of your money, giving you good returns, paying you big dividends. I definitely like to see companies with a long track record of doing well, but of course that's not the end all, because there's a lot of great income ETFs that have come out in the last couple of years that have done very well. I'm also going to be doing these ETFs by kind of the combo. So, it doesn't really make sense for me to have JEPQ at like number 5 and then JEPB at number 4, right? Like a lot of people buy these products in combo. So I'm kind of ranking them together. It's more by income provider than it is by the individual ETF. And of course, guys, this is just my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below. Just don't cry like a little baby. I had some people very triggered at a poll that I put up on my channel recently. Yeah, because of all the problems in the world, right? It doesn't matter if there's wars going on or if people have lost their job because the economy is so stagnant. The thing that triggers people the most is me putting a poll mentioning a recent news event. Yeah, this is what snowflakes are getting upset about these days. Guys, this channel is all about making money. The real world is hard. Feelings will get hurt. I'm always gonna call it how I see it. And sometimes, guys, unfortunately, the truth that I tell, it's gonna hurt some feelings. But I'm always looking out for your best interest. I want us to grow this wealth together. So before we get into the top 5, let's give some honorable mentions to some companies that just barely missed out on this list. So you'd probably be a little bit surprised to hear that a YieldMax product didn't make the list, but it came pretty close to doing so. YieldMax's YMax, this is the fund of funds, invest in a lot of income ETFs. It just barely missed the list. Even though I'm not always the biggest fan of a lot of YieldMax products, this YMax has actually done very, very well. I just recently put out a video on its impressive performance. I just want to see a longer track record of them continuing to be successful. So who knows, maybe next month they might make an appearance on this list. We also have BlackRock or iShares Bali. It just barely also missed out on this list. It has kind of a low dividend yield, so that's kind of the reason why it didn't make the list. All right, so without further ado, number 5. SVOLV, Simplify Volatility Premium ETF. So this is a product that's been out for a couple years now. Simplify product has almost $1 billion in assets under management and investing in income producing securities like high yield government bonds. So they're going to be doing a short VIX position. They're going to be doing VIX call options for crash protection. So that's some nice insurance that they have there as well. So SVOLV isn't exactly super easy to understand. I'd say it's probably the most complicated of any of the ETFs that are appearing on this list. But thankfully, you can get a great explanation on how this fund works from a representative of Simplify. I have a 2-part interview with one of the representatives from Simplify on my channel, so check that out if you really want to know the details of how this fund works. I really like that SVOLV. It's been around for a couple of years now. It has a really stable NAV, especially in the last 2 or so years. It's been very stable. At times, it's actually beaten the overall market in total return. And you're getting a 16% dividend yield, which is pretty impressive. And that's to say that there's certainly not any risk associated with this fund, right? Steep increases in volatility, that could really hurt this fund. And just remember, like basically every income ETF that appears on this list, they are actively managed. So that's always another risk in itself. But so far, the management over at Simplify, they're doing a great job with SVOLV. That's why they're ranked number 5 on my list. Number 4, NEO's SPY QQQI. All right, so SPY has been around since the summer of 2022, and then its twin sister QQQI came out in January 2024. I guess they're probably not twins if they came out of the womb like 2 years apart. But anyway, both have done very well. So let's go over how this fund makes money, right? So they are getting high monthly income by investing in the NASDAQ 100 for QQQI or the S&P 500 for SPY and implementing a data-driven call option strategy. Again, actively managed. They're all going to be kind of doing their own research and analysis on how far out of the money or in the money some of these options should be. And they're actively managed by NEOS. So the fund is going to take advantage of tax loss harvesting opportunities, Section 1256 contracts, and those get lower 60/40 tax rates. So QQQI, it's designed to capture some of the capital appreciation if the market goes higher, right? The NASDAQ constantly has some of the best companies, innovation, but it's not a replacement for the actual index. So don't think if you own QQQI that you're getting the same thing as the QQQs. Definitely a big difference in the two funds, especially over the long run. The QQQs is almost certainly going to be outperforming. By investing in QQQI, there's certainly an opportunity cost, and investors should understand if the market appreciates, a portion of that upside will not be captured as percentages capped through its call strategy to distribute that monthly income. So again, guys, stable NAV with both of these income ETFs. SPY giving around a 12.10% yield, which is super juicy, guys. Getting a 1% return almost every month, that is ridiculously good. QQQI, you're getting a 14.4% dividend yield. Just remember though, even though these dividends are certainly super juicy right now, dividends are never guaranteed. So again, it's always going to be very variable. You don't know what next month might bring. Number 3, JP Morgan Chase, JEPQ. So these are some of the OG income ETFs out there. Believe it or not, I remember when JEPI first came out, I was making videos about it all the way back then. JEPI just turned 4 years old and JEPQ is 2 years old. So JEPI, since its inception, we're talking 4 years now, is up over 12%. So for so many of these income ETFs to see their NAV totally erode in less than a year, but JEPI, 4 years of impressive performance, they're actually up 12%, and they have around an 8% yield in dividends, which they've been able to maintain over these years. The S&P 500 return is generally only about 7 to 10% a year. I'm being 100% serious when I say this. If I was somebody who was in retirement and I just wanted some juicy cash flow, JEPI is the ideal investment. JEPI these past 4 years has really been one of the ideal products that I would put a portion of my portfolio in because it's generating some juicy returns. It's also maintaining my wealth, which is such an important part of when one is in retirement. So the options overlays are implemented and written out of the money on the S&P 500, and that's to get that juicy monthly income. So JEPQ is going to give closer to a 10% yield because they're doing it on the NASDAQ 100. That's going to be a little bit more volatile. And JEPI, JEPQ, they have a multi-pronged strategy to get income, right? They're going to be getting income from the options trading that they're doing. They're going to get dividends from the companies it actually owns. And of course, there's going to be some capital appreciation when those stocks inevitably do well. There's also a pretty low expense ratio, right? JP Morgan Chase, arguably the biggest bank in the world, they're able to get away with some of these lower expense ratios, so only 35 basis points, and that's going to not eat into our returns as much. Now, one thing I'm going to dock JEPI and JEPQ on is those ELNs. Nobody ever seems to actually understand how these work. And they're also a little bit vague on how these work in their own prospectus, in my opinion. So I'm going to dock them a little bit there. But the dividends, they have been great these past couple years. Let's hope to more success in the future. Number 2, REC shares, FEPI. So FEPI has absolutely exploded in the scene. Only been around since October of 2023, but the assets under management is rapidly growing, now at $236 million. People are really starting to wake up and see how great of an investment that FEPI could be since they launched in October of 2023. So FEPI is on pace for a 25% annualized return, which is out of this world. Now, what is the catch? You have to know that there's some sort of catch here. Like getting a 25% yield, that must mean the NAV is going down every single month. Well, is it constantly being eroded? No, the fund is actually up 4.5%. Again, a super small sample size. The fund hasn't been out that long, but the performance is certainly impressive after 8 months. Now, FEPI is I would say of all the ETFs out here, this probably has to be one of the easiest to understand. They own 15 big tech companies, and they're just writing covered calls. And personally, a lot of these companies that FEPI is investing in, they're ones that I would want to hold myself. So they're not getting like some shady penny stock. You're getting great companies. So it's a way to get exposure to that. And they're also pretty conservative in how they do some of their calls. You can see all their options trading in if you actually look at their holdings. So I certainly don't mind paying up a little bit of an expense ratio of 65 basis points because they're doing a great job of getting that juicy return for me. Number 1, YieldMax, Tesla. Oh wait, this is a power rankings of the best income ETFs, not ones that destroy NAV. Number 1, Goldman Sachs, GPIQ, GPIX. All right, so I'm actually surprised this doesn't get talked about more in our community. Now, these are relatively newer funds, but these have to be arguably the 2 best income ETFs in the market right now. They launched in October of 2023. And the fund does call options, and they provide exposure to the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. They have the lowest expense ratio of any of the funds that I've mentioned. Right now, it's just 29 basis points, so they should be able to hold that throughout the end of this year at least, and then it might go back up to 35 basis points. Owning these funds that mimic indexes, it's not the same as owning the underlying equity, but I had to do a double take on how great GPIX and GPIQ have performed. So GPIX, since its inception, is up over 18%. The S&P 500 is up about 28% in that same time span. But, of course, owning these 2 income ETFs, that should provide around an additional 7 to 10% in dividends. So GPIQ, they're up over 19%. So we're not only getting a very low income ETF expense ratio, we're getting some super juicy returns in both dividends and capital appreciation. Now, I've personally held QYLD for years. We're talking since 2019. Yeah, I'm certainly an OG investor of these products, and I've made over hundreds of dollars with QYield over the years. But back then, there weren't as many great products as there is now. So clearly, there are some better performing products, and I'm seriously considering dumping my QYLD shares and transferring them into Goldman Sachs. All right, guys, so those are going to be my inaugural power rankings of what I believe are the top 5 best income ETFs out there. There's so many income ETFs out there. I know I probably missed some of your favorite ones, so I'd love for you to tell me what you like in the comments below, what you think maybe should be ranked a little bit higher or maybe even ranked lower. And that's how we're going to learn from one another, is having great conversation in the comments below. But even better conversation happens in the Discord. So make sure you join that. We have some great investors in there constantly talking stocks and ways to make money. Make sure you guys check out the Patreon to get full access to my almost $200,000 portfolio that has been beating the market the last 3 years. And I will catch you on the next one.